Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Sutter County Board of Supervisors meeting for January 28th, 2025. I have a procedure for public comment that I'd like to read. Members of the public will be allowed to address the board during the board's consideration of each agenda item. If you wish to speak on any item appearing on the agenda, please fill out a speaker card noting the number of the item on the agenda about which you wish to speak and present it to the board clerk. If you wish to speak about more than one agenda item, please fill out a separate card for each item. If you wish to speak under public comment, please note that on the speaker card. When the matter is announced, please approach the speaker's lectern and, after being recognized by the chair, okay? So now we got the legalese out of the way. Let's move on to the regular meeting, and we'll start with the roll call, please.
Supervisor Boone? Here. Supervisor Flores?
Present.
Supervisor Ziegemeyer? Here. Supervisor Baines?
Present.
Supervisor Stevens?
Here.
Okay, please rise or stand and let's join me in the invocation. It'll be done today by David Dina, the pastor for Praise Chapel, and then remain standing as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you've given us. We thank you for our supervisors, for our leadership, for our public, for everybody coming and gathering together. This day we pray for wisdom, for understanding, for grace, for peace, and for your love, Father. And we just give you all thanks, glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. If I could ask Mr. Ken Sraw to lead us in the pledge, please. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. And we're going to, supervisors, we have a presentation. Clerk,
Will Christopher Padigo please join the board up front for a presentation of a certificate of recognition?
I see Chris already has a huge fan club, so not much else we can say about Chris, but we're going to say a lot because you know what, we really appreciate you, Chris. And Supervisor Baines recommended that we present you with an award today, and you know what, we all wholeheartedly jumped in and agreed that it was time. You know, I've worked with you on both sides of the river, and you just continuously demonstrate your dedication to the community and all the hard work you put in and taking photos and sharing lots of information. And you also served in the past as a city council member. And we just want you to know that the community appreciates you for what you've done. We're going to present you this certificate, but I think Supervisor Baines wants to say a few words and maybe the other supervisors, okay?
Mr. Pedigo, so Chris actually lives at this on. Yep. Yeah. Right. Not only does he live in my district, but we went to high school together, and so I've known you for quite some time. We're just thankful and grateful for all that you do in the community. I know I'm not one to keep a camera on hand other than my cell phone. I don't think I've ever printed a picture from my phone, but you're at every community event, whether it's, you know, kids sports, high school, elementary school, you're everywhere in the community. Just yesterday you were at the farewell to the old Marysville Hotel. There's not an event that we go to that you're not there, and you capture those moments. And we just want to thank you. We just want to thank you for your time, your dedication, and your support for the community. So wish you the best, and just thought it was appropriate to give you some kind of recognition.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Not only does he take pictures here in California, but he also travels out of state because he's traveled his alumni Sutter out of state to take pictures. The cool thing about Chris's pictures is a lot of parents, like Supervisor Baines said, don't have time to take pictures because they're watching their kids play sports. And Chris is able to take all those pictures so parents are able to get on Facebook and capture all those moments, and they're great pictures. That's having an amazing photographer out there for literally free pictures, and they turn out great. He's been to every community event, each side of the river, which is amazing. So we love having you, and he's a huge advocate for the library. So he continues to serve his community in every part that he can. Thank you, Chris.
So again, for those of you who don't know, we do not have a public information officer. So when we're out in the public, it's been thanks to Chris for capturing those moments whenever we're out in the community, and so we're able to report back to the county. So I want to thank you once again.
Congratulations, Chris. Stand for the photo. We want to hear Chris say it. We want to hear Chris say a few words. You know how to do this.
I've done this a couple of times, and I won't be long-winded. I just appreciate all the community support. I do this because it's my passion. I love to be out there. I love to do what I can, whether it's in digital or whether it's in the newspaper or whether it's on Facebook or some of my other Smug Muggle page where people collect my pictures. But to me, someone brought me a yearbook this year, and it clicked in my mind the reason I do this. Because there's some kid out there who's going to pick that yearbook up that their picture's in or the newspaper and think, wow, somebody captured that moment. Because there's a lot of people that can't go to the games, aunts and uncles, grandparents. And if I can provide a little bit of a joy and a special moment, it's captured in time forever. And that's my passion. And that's what I try to do for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, a statement for public comment. Members of the public will be allowed to address the board on items of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board of Supervisors. State law provides that no discussion or action may be taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar groups together those items which are considered non-controversial, for which prior policy direction has been given to staff and that require only routine action by the board. The chair will advise the audience that the matters may be adopted in total or by one motion. However, the board may, at its option or upon request of a member of the public, consider any matter separately. I'd entertain a motion for consent.
Excuse me, through the
We will
chair.
be removing item number 13 or for discussion.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We do have 4 public comments.
4 public comments, okay. So then we do the public comments now, right? Okay, so go ahead. So,
The first public comment is Maggie Walker.
hi, Maggie.
Supervisor Flores, Chair, and all the supervisors. I just want to make a comment again on the Real Estate Committee, the standing committee. I know it's been a while since we've had a meeting. October, I rescheduled a doctor's appointment for it, and then it was canceled. I know there's been a few closed sessions, and the last meeting scheduled in January. I didn't reschedule my appointment that day, and it was canceled. So I just hope we have one in April. I just love to hear about the little we have one big real estate, but the other little pieces and parcels we've discussed before. That's all. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Maggie.
Our next public comment is Mr. Trainer.
Mr. Trainer. Oh, there he is. Okay.
I had thought that I would speak after hearing from Pioneer, and that's what I thought to put the piece of paper in on. But however, now that I'm here, I would like to state that I went to the meeting at the city on the Pioneer issue, and would hope that, and I mentioned to the city that I am all in favor of Pioneer. However, with a project like might come into the area, I think there should be a lot more due diligence done to make sure we get the best deal we can for the city. I don't know what this board has gone into on this, but I might have some more questions and answers to ask afterwards. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Trainer. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Tina Hessong.
Hi, Tina.
Hey. Last meeting, the certified numbers for the 2024 November election were stated correctly. However, the numbers were incorrectly attributed to Shirley Weber when Wikipedia was the correct source. And so I needed to give credit where it should be given and was due. And then I'd like to continue by reading to you an article by Chris Street of the Mountaintop Times called California Cash Crisis to Cause Budget Defaults, and it's dated January 24th, 2025. Governor Newsom issued 30-day notice to announce that with California in a cash crisis, schools, counties, cities, and state agencies should have no expectation of full funding. This is Gov speak, for we are about to default. The process known as issuing a budget letter came just 13 days after Newsom claimed in his January 10th budget proposal for the coming 25-26 fiscal year beginning July 1st that the budget is balanced and reflects minor revenue growth over the next 3-year budget window. At the time, Newsom was indicating the total economic losses from the Los Angeles fires would be manageable, $10 billion, with insurance covering $2 billion of property losses and state losing $1 billion in taxes. The Mountaintop Times reported on January 15th that reinsurance consultants were predicting that ongoing wildfire losses would set a global record of $2 billion, and insurance losses had spiked to $25 billion. Additionally, the state-sponsored FAIR Plan insurer of last resort was insolvent with $3 billion of assets to cover $8 billion of claims. With FAIR Plan allowed to push losses to every insured property holder, Mountaintop Times warned every insured property in California was at risk for a $5,200 assessment. Verisk's Extreme Event Solutions on January 22nd upped the reinsurer's estimates of wildfire total economic losses to $275 billion. With the Palisades and Eaton fires, insured losses of between $28 to $35 billion. Every insured homeowner would now be at risk of a $7,300 assessment. With the $25 billion in total economic losses and 9 fires still burning, the state of California tax and revenue losses this year could be over $20 billion. The Palisades coastline and foothills of Altadena were populated with the same type of wealthy millennials that have been leading the out-migration from California.
I'll be wrapping up, Tina.
Yeah, finished. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you, Tina. Next
Our
speaker.
last public speaker is Janet Johnson.
Hello, Janet.
I'll start a sentence before, so it'll make in her paragraph. The Palisades coastline and foothills of Altadena were populated with the same type of wealthy millennials that have been leading the out-migration from California. Without migration, reducing state tax collection by $6 billion this year, the fires will drastically increase out-migration tax losses. With the Trump administration initiating a federal extension for California wildfire victims, the state must postpone 2024 tax return filing and payments until October 15, 2025. That delay will cut cash by $30 billion. The new budget letter states that Governor Newsom's Department of Finance intends to drastically reduce mandatory spending based on K-12 class enrollments, Medi-Cal caseloads, and local population revenue sharing. California by April will have a $40 billion deficit. Governor Newsom might like to cut spending, but the state constitution has been amended 524 times to mostly lock in spending for powerful money interests. President Biden, in his final days, granted California an unusual advance of emergency federal aid to immediately begin to pay the 75% maximum for fire management and debris removal over the next 180 days. President Trump visited North Carolina on Friday to encourage recovery from storm damage recovery and is scheduled to arrive in Los Angeles on Saturday. Trump has stated California does not deserve a disaster bailout because Newsom refused to build new dams and water infrastructure. Governor Newsom, before the wildfires, had lobbied the legislature for $50 million for litigation to relentlessly resist Trump 47 policies. But now he intends to be standing by on the tarmac at LAX to meet Air Force One despite not being officially invited. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And I'd like to say, since I have a few more minutes, I am a patriot and I love my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. God bless all of you and God bless America.
Thank you, Janet. Any further speakers? No? Okay, then I would entertain a motion for the consent calendar with the removal of items 13 for discussion.
Through the chair,
Yes.
move to approve items number 1 through 18, taking out item 13.
Okay, we have a first by Supervisor Bain, second by Supervisor Ziegemeier. All in favor?
Aye.
Any oppositions or abstentions? There being none, the consent calendar carries. Thank you. We'll go to item 13 for discussion.
Adoption of a resolution authorizing the exception to the CalPERS 180-day waiting period to rehire an annuitant with critical skills.
Excuse me, before you begin speaking, I'd like to call up Manny Cardoza, actually. He asked to be one of the speakers, and this is a good moment before we continue on with the hearings. Hello, Manny.
Thank you, Board Chair and Chair Supervisors, Board Chair and Supervisors. I want to thank you all for appointing me for a second term on the Regional Housing Authority. It is a privilege, an honor, and a pleasure to serve Sutter County, working on getting low-income housing for the low-income, the farm workers, and the disabled people in our community. I just want to thank you once again for appointing me for my second term. Thank you, Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Manny. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll
Adoption
move on.
of a resolution authorizing an exception to the CalPERS 180-day waiting period to rehire an annuitant with critical skills.
Hello, Veronica.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. Veronica Baumgardner, HR Director. I am here before you today to request, as she stated, a waiver to the 180-day CalPERS waiting period. So I'll go into that a little bit. On October 25th, 2024, Melinda Katbagan, I hope I said it right, Melinda, retired from Sutter County from the Health and Human Services Finance and Admin Department in the role as the Admin Services Officer for Social Services. Due to her extensive experience, the Health and Human Services Department would like to rehire Melinda on an extra help basis for her her very critical skills for a very critical position as they go through the budget process. So I'm here before you today because CalPERS asks that there be a 180-day waiting period requirement, and she cannot be hired sooner than that 6 months unless an exception is approved by the Board of Supervisors. So pursuant to Government Code 7522.56 and 7522.562F, the 180-day waiting period for retirement and post-retirement temporary employment may be waived on a limited duration. The Human Resource Department, again, is asking that you exercise your authority and grant the Health and Human Services Office an exception to this waiting period so that she may come back again and help them throughout their process of accounting, budgeting, and just really her background and knowledge unique to social services is really what they're needing at this time. So again, it's on a temporary basis, 10 hours a week. And as you guys know, retired annuitants are only allowed to work, a certain number of hours. And so that we're asking to bring her back at the same level that she left at. But again, it'd be for 10 hours a week, less than 6 months appointment. And the costs will be absorbed within the existing budget units of Health and Human Services and will not increase the general fund.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Veronica. Do we have any public comment from the clerk? Okay, then we'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Ziegemeier, a second by Supervisor Baines. This will be a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Boone?
Aye.
Supervisor Flores?
Aye.
Supervisor Ziegemeier? Supervisor Baines?
Aye.
Supervisor Stevens?
Okay, the motion carries. Thanks a lot, Veronica, and welcome back, Melinda. Good to have you back. Working again. All right. We'll move to appearance items now, and I'll call on Stephen Smith, County Administrator.
Reconsideration of Supervisor Carm Baines's vote on agenda item number 16 from the January 14th, 2025 meeting.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Chair and Supervisors. As stated, Supervisor Baines had asked to have this item reconsidered to possibly change his vote. This was regarding a report that was to be issued regarding the hemp moratorium. So the report has been issued. But however, for the record, if Supervisor Baines would like to change his vote, he can do so, and I would turn it over to the board.
Okay. So at this point, I don't know, are there any public comments on this matter? Okay, and then do the board have any questions? None? Then I'm going to call for a motion.
So I'll move to, with the recommendation that my vote be changed from item 18 from the last board meeting to state that it was a nay vote.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, first by Supervisor Baines, second by Supervisor Stevens, and we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Boone?
Aye.
Supervisor Flores?
Aye.
Supervisor Ziegemeier? No. Supervisor Baines?
Aye.
Supervisor Stevens?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And we'll move to item number 19, still Mr. Smith, County Administrator.
Introduction of an ordinance authorizing the implementation of a community choice aggregation program in the County of Sutter under Public Utilities Code Section 366.2, waive the full reading, direct the clerk to read the title only, and continue the item to the Board of Supervisors meeting of February 25th, 2025 for adoption.
Yes, so over the past several months, the board has heard from staff and Pioneer Energy regarding the community choice aggregation program that Pioneer runs in several jurisdictions. They're a community choice aggregation program, as mentioned, authorized under Assembly Bill 117 of 2002. The CCA provides local control over the electricity supply with a primary objective of providing competitive rates to residents and businesses within its jurisdictions. Pioneer purchases the electricity supply, and PG&E transmits and delivers the power through their infrastructure. On April 9th, 2024, Pioneer's board chair, at the time, Councilmember Alice Dowden Calvillo of the City of Auburn and its executive team provided a presentation to the board. The presentation provided specific information about its commitment to ratepayer savings and products because staff and supervisors did look at another regional CCA, but decided that Pioneer was the best fit for Sutter County. On June 11th, 2024, the Pioneer executive team gave a presentation to the board, including an overview of the many benefits of the CCAs in general and Pioneer specifically. And at this meeting, the board authorized funding for a study. It's a $30,000 study, half of which was covered by Pioneer, and then the remaining $15,000 was split, $5,000 each between Yuba City, Live Oak, and Sutter County, as both cities are looking at becoming part of the CCA as well. And at their December 19th, 2024 meeting, the Pioneer Governing Board voted to unanimously approve to allow staff to begin the process of amending the JPA to allow the counties of Butte, Nevada, Sutter, and Tuolumne, and the cities of Chico, Oroville, Live Oak, Sonora, and Yuba City, and the town of Paradise to join. Kind of the point of CCAs, as outlined in the staff report, is to have stable and competitive rates, have local control so that you have local people as part of the JPA voting board, to have less reliance on the primary PG&E generation of power, to provide local jobs and power supply resources, and new members have an impact on energy efficiency programs that are developed and the ability to customize programs to their specific needs. If approved, Pioneer plans to submit an implementation plan detailing their expansion and planned service launch to the CPUC in March of this year. Also, there was an impact assessment study done that Pioneer will be back next board meeting to present on the results of that, and then at the following meeting would be the second reading of the ordinance if approved by the board today. So that's the summary up to this point. I'm happy to answer any questions, and we do have some representatives from Pioneer Energy here today.
Okay, do we have public comment cards? Okay, we heard from Mr. Trainer. Did anyone from Pioneer Energy want to say a few words before I bring it back to the board? Not at this time? Okay, all right, then bring it back to the board for discussion.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to thank Phil Trainer. It was his recommendation. We had several conversations where he was like, hey, that our community deserves this with the utility prices going up. And so it was with his guidance that we reached out to Pioneer and to the other outfits, and to a point that he made earlier, that this was by far the best fit for the residents and the businesses of Sutter County. So I just want to thank you. I think we wouldn't be here at this point if it wasn't for Mr. Trainer. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Trainer. Would anyone like to entertain a motion?
Well, before I second.
So we have comments from.
Before I second, I think it's a great thing. They talked about a minimum savings of possibly 12%, and that was on the minimum side. And who knows? Granted, when we first brought this up, PG&E has gone up almost 30–40%. So hopefully this puts us in track. And remember, you're always going to have the option for either or. So just because Pioneer Power is going to be there doesn't mean you have to switch over. You will have that option. So that is imperative that the community knows that. Second.
Okay, we have a first from Supervisor Bain, second from Supervisor Ziegemeier. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Boone?
Aye.
Supervisor Flores?
Aye.
Supervisor Ziegemeier?
Yes.
Supervisor Baines?
Aye.
Supervisor Stevens?
Aye. Okay, if I could have the clerk read the ordinance, please.
An ordinance of the County of Sutter amending the Sutter County Ordinance Code by adding Chapter 1070 pertaining to authorizing the implementation of a community choice aggregation program in Sutter County.
Okay, thank you. And we have follow-up reports and announcements. Any? None? Okay, let's go to the public hearing. Item 22. Clerk, if you'd read the title, please.
Conduct a public hearing to consider Ordinance 1728 and to extend or modify and extend the interim ordinance pertaining to a temporary moratorium on the cultivation of industrial hemp within the unincorporated areas of Sutter County.
Thank you, Supervisors. So my name is Taylor Cata. I was here before you on December 17th, well, actually before the previous board, to introduce a temporary interim moratorium, urgency moratorium around our industrial hemp ordinance. The moratorium has been in effect since then, and it is set to expire on January 31st unless we extend it. On January 14th, before this new board, County Administrator Stephen Smith introduced a written report that indicated the need to continue this moratorium, to continue studying, and to continue addressing the effects, the negative effects on the community that the current ordinance has had. So before you today, we have, which will require a 4/5 vote, several possible actions. So we have an option to extend the interim moratorium as it is, so which would continue to have a ban on industrial hemp cultivation and processing in Sutter County for the next 10 months and 15 days. We have an option to modify and extend the moratorium. And then we have the option to do nothing, which would have us revert back to the previous ordinance, which is to allow hemp processing and cultivation according to our ordinance. So I will go through the two options that we have, really, not the do nothing options, because that's self-explanatory. So the option to extend only would be to continue the ordinance that I brought before you on December 17th. And that would be for 10 months and 15 days, bringing that to a 1-year period. At the end of that 10 months and 15 days, there is also, under government code, the option to extend for another 1 year. So the interim ordinance, no matter which way we go, can be in effect for a maximum of 2 years. So under the extend only ordinance, it's essentially the same as what I introduced back in December, with the following slight modifications. Due to an inadvertent error, we had it applying to cultivation but not processing. It does apply to both, so we're correcting that to make that clear if it were extended. And then we did want to acknowledge in that the written report that was issued by this board back on January 14th. And we also added the definitions. So if we were to go with that option to extend only, we're basically going to have is what will be in effect for the next 10 months. The second option is to modify and extend the ordinance. So this was actually not staff's original intention. We wanted to bring you the full extension, but following the January 14th meeting, we understood that this board wanted to meet with members of the community and consider more about the impacts of, a blanket ban versus more of a targeted ban. So meetings were held with all the supervisors and various community groups over the past week. And from that, we have another option for you, which is what we call the modify and extend option. So in this option, the recommendation from staff following these meetings and with County Counsel and County Administrator Smith, we're able to pull together the information that you all haven't been able to discuss yet amongst yourselves. The recommendation is that we would allow for the continued cultivation and processing of hemp in Sutter County. However, the growing must be outside and it must be in the ground. No containers, no greenhouses, no hoop houses, et cetera. Of course, there would be an exception for containerized nursery stock. So if you're getting a plant that's going elsewhere, it can temporarily be in the container and then you plant it as soon as practicable. We also have clarified what the sensitive receptors are, by which there's a zone around sensitive receptors where hemp cannot be grown. And that would include churches and childcare centers, in addition to what we previously had, which is hospitals, parks, schools, school evacuation centers, and youth-oriented facilities. We did leave some open areas in this modify and extend ordinance. So the two areas that we would need direction from should you pursue this option is what distance you would like from the city limits, sensitive receptors, and the Sutter Point specific plan, as well as what distance you would like from dwellings, unless those dwellings are owned or leased by the person who's growing, or there's written consent by the owner of the properties. So I did also want to make sure that I called your attention to some of the options we have for further enforcing hemp and its sister crop cannabis in the county. So we have this industrial hemp ordinance, but we also have continued to have a marijuana ordinance. Marijuana is, of course, prohibited to be grown in Sutter County. We have enforcement tools available for what would be considered marijuana. So if what someone's growing is hemp, then it's under the agricultural commissioner to enforce it. But if it's become marijuana and it has greater than 1% THC content, then it would be enforced by development services, and we have a very thorough mechanism for enforcing that as well. So I want to make sure that as we're considering this, we know that both sides of the house are handled there. And then, so that was my brief introduction. I really want to, hear from the public and allow you all to get into it with me. So I'm going to hand it off first to our Assistant Agricultural Commissioner, Nicholas Oliver. Our Ag Commissioner, Lisa Herbert, unfortunately couldn't be here. But Nick's going to read into the record a letter that Lisa has written for the board and for the public, illustrating the continued need for this interim ordinance and what the impacts are basically for the current ordinance that was effective before the ban went into effect. And then following public comment, Nick and I will both be available for questions and to go through this. Nick?
Good afternoon, members of the board. Nick Oliver, Assistant Agricultural Commissioner. I have a letter that Commissioner Lisa Herbert has asked me to read. Dear members of the Sutter County Board of Supervisors, thank you for your thoughtful consideration of the continuation of the interim urgency ordinance imposing a temporary moratorium on the cultivation of industrial hemp within the unincorporated areas of Sutter County. As the Agricultural Commissioner of Sutter County, I urge you to deliberate carefully on the broader impacts of this significant decision. Our office administers a variety of mandated programs that face heightened risks due to ongoing support for industrial hemp cultivation, a program that has proven to be a public nuisance, negatively affecting public health, safety, and welfare, while also posing severe fiscal challenges. Personally, I've encountered a death threat from an individual associated with the hemp industry, highlighting the critical nature of this issue. Sutter County's fiscal crisis further intensifies the need for careful stewardship of resources. My office has endured substantial budget reductions. In fiscal year 2023-24, we sustained a cut of $166,463 from our $3.2 million budget. The adopted budget for fiscal year 2024-25 reflects an additional reduction of $361,841, bringing the total recent cuts to $528,304. Moreover, a hiring freeze has been placed on 2 key positions within our department, 1 agricultural and standards biologist and 1 secretary. These reductions limit our capacity to fulfill mandated obligations. The financial burden of the industrial hemp program cannot be ignored. From fiscal years 2018-19 through 2023-24, the program has accumulated a $415,827 shortfall, excluding the ongoing deficit since July 1, 2024. This program's operation directly conflicts with your stated board goal to operate county government in a fiscally and managerially responsible manner to ensure Sutter County remains a viable and sustainable community to live, work, recreate, and raise a family. Additionally, it contradicts the Sutter County Industrial Hemp Cultivation and Processing Ordinance, which mandates that it is the intent that the county shall be reimbursed for all time, services, and materials required to implement, administer, and enforce state law and this chapter associated with cultivation and processing of hemp. Despite our earnest efforts over the past 6 years, industrial hemp cultivation remains an unsteady venture nationwide, with underdeveloped markets undermining its viability as a significant crop. Some might argue that the program aligns with the board's goal to protect, support, and enhance Sutter County's rich agricultural base. However, harvested acreage data tells a different story. Industrial hemp contributes a negligible fraction of total farmland. There's a chart included here which lists the harvested acreage of industrial hemp from 2019 to 2024, including the percentage of total farmland. In 2019, there were 411 harvested acres, which represented 0.11% of Sutter County farmland. In 2022, just under 321 harvested acres, representing 0.09%. 2021, just under 5 harvested acres, less than 0.00%. In 2022, 48.5 acres, representing 0.01%. 2023, 68.5 acres, representing 0.02%. And in 2024, 228.85 acres. And there's a little asterisk there, which indicates some of those are double cropped. Those are greenhouses that are producing more than one crop on the same footprint. And that represents 0.06% of farmland. This minimal contribution does not account for additional impacts on other departments, including the Sheriff's Office, Development Services, County Administrative Office, and County Council. In conclusion, I respectfully request that the interim moratorium on industrial hemp cultivation remain in place until the county's budget stabilizes and sustainable markets for hemp products are established. Should you choose to permit hemp cultivation, I urge you to direct staff to swiftly revise the current ordinance to mitigate public nuisances and address the negative impacts on public health, safety, and welfare. Additionally, I ask that you prioritize reinstating the frozen positions within our department and prevent further budget cuts for fiscal year 2025-26. Thank you for your time, consideration, and commitment to Sutter County's fiscal health and public welfare. Sincerely, Lisa D. Herbert, Agricultural Commissioner Sealer.
Thank you, Nick.
I will stand by to take any questions following public comment.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. At this time, we'll have public comment on this matter, and clerk, if you can, we'll open up the hearing.
Mr. Chairman, can you?
Open up the public hearing. I have to do it officially, and then I'll ask you for public comments.
Yes, our first public comment is Jeannie Thibodeau.
My name is Jeannie Thibodeau, and thank you for letting me address you. Probably. I'm just short. I'm really short. Okay, again, my name is Jeannie Thibodeau. Thank you for letting me address you. I was going to read the letter, but you did a fabulous job. I don't have to do that. So I'm going to say a few sentences based on as a person who lives there and gets to experience this at firsthand. For 3 months, we cannot open our doors, cannot open our windows. We have 2 very expensive air purifiers running 24/7, and it does not give us a quality of life at all. And is this what we want Sutter to be known as? A place where you cannot live, a drug, people smell it, they all think it's marijuana. We've tried really hard to make Sutter a really nice place where everybody wants to live. A house goes on sale, 1 day later, it's sold. We don't want to go back to that. And it is a public nuisance, and it's also detrimental to health. If you have a breathing problem, you're stuck inside the house. We have children at Sutter High, Britain, who are having to experience this all day. And is this what we want our children to have to experience? It's not safe for them. We're not giving them a good example. So that's mainly what I wanted to say. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Our next public speaker is Joe Lemonager.
Good evening. Hopefully all of you received a copy and had an opportunity to read the letter submitted by the Yuba Sutter Farm Bureau in support of the measure in December that was passed at the time 5-0 by the past board. Since December, what's changed? Nothing. You're still going to hear numerous comments this evening about the odor, the quality of life, the public nuisance, the potential links to crime. But furthermore, my concern falls more in line with our ag commissioner. Hemp has proven itself as a non-viable crop in our region. As shown by the chart that Lisa provided, acreage has continued to drop year after year, and even last year with a slight uptick, it was still only a few hundred acres. The county is undergoing a tremendous financial burden due to a very small percentage of production off of industrial hemp. As a supervisor, you have an obligation to govern this county in a financially responsible manner. Industrial hemp production for industrial hemp production to continue in Sutter County is a step away from that responsibility. At the very least, I hope you guys take into account the information provided you by your ag department, by Lisa, and understand that for Sutter County, the best thing is to move forward with the all-out ban of industrial hemp, and that at the very least, that the moratorium remain in place until a time that a appropriate buffer zone around the sensitive areas and a way for the county to recoup cost is implemented in a new ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next public speaker is Matt Conant.
Well, I'm a little rusty on this side of the dais, so you have to forgive me. So Sutter County is an agricultural county. Ag is the lifeblood of our county and contributes most of the tax dollars and revenue to the county. Our ag commissioner stated that the loss of $415,827 in the last 6 years from 2019 to 24. And during that period, there was only 1,082 acres totally, 0.67 acres total grown of hemp in Sutter County. And I'd be willing to bet that between the county counsel's office, the county administration office, code enforcement's office, the sheriff's office, that we spent another $200,000. So let's just call it an even $600,000. You guys know I'm a numbers guy. So everybody who thinks that this is not a big deal, that's a $554.18 loss to the county taxpayers per every acre of hemp for the last 6 years. I don't think it's right that we spend $554 to grow a crop that is not viable in the county and stick it on the backs of the taxpayers. And that's what's happened. The taxpayers have absorbed this cost. Now you'd say, well, okay, you know, they haven't had a chance to really prove this crop is viable. Most of the hemp grown in the county, 80% roughly, of the plants are grown in pots. Why? Well, hemp looks like, smells like, grows like marijuana. How do we really know that that is all hemp out there? And I'd be willing to bet that it's not. I think that's why they grow it in hoop houses and in pots. So that when our ag commissioner goes and investigates and does the testing on it, they pull the pots, pull the plants, and move on to other locations. And then, last but not least, the hemp that we grow in this county is simply not viable. It has not been a viable commodity for the last 6 years. And I was on the board when this thing all started, and it was not viable then, and I don't see it'll be viable 10 years from now, and I just don't think it's right to spend taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conant.
Our next public comment is Jennifer Dupre.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Supervisors. I am here to encourage you to continue the moratorium on hemp. We've been lucky so far. My experience has been that even hemp, easily mistaken for marijuana, oftentimes does lead to what we call pot rips, which are incredibly dangerous and often lead not just to loss of life, but to significant injuries and significant damage. Criminals do not do research, and they tend to be opportunistic. They drive by ag land, they smell pot, what they think is pot, they see what they think is pot, and they decide, hey, I'm gonna go get some guns, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna steal myself a bunch of weed, and it goes horribly wrong. Like I said, we've been lucky so far. So I would encourage, for public safety reasons, to extend the moratorium. As I said, we've been lucky so far. I would also point out that any modifications would essentially be useless. It doesn't matter if the plants are in pots or in the ground. They still encourage and increase the likelihood of someone trying to do a pot rip. And considering that this is a crop that is costing the county money and not helping the county in any way, I would ask that you extend the moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one point of clarification. Pot rip, just I'm assuming it just means stealing the pot, right? Is that what you're telling?
It's going in, basically, sometimes they'll cut them, but usually they will literally just rip plants from the ground and throw them in a truck, sometimes a U-Haul truck that's been backed up, sometimes just someone's pickup truck, and a lot of times they'll take off the plates and they'll take off. And it's supposed to be fast and smooth. Oftentimes it's not.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Appreciate it. And thank you for the comments.
Our next public comment is J.R. Tiara.
Good afternoon, Supervisors, and thank you for taking time. Thank you for taking time to meet with some of the growers, people concerned as farmers in the area, and non-grower residents of the community this last week to discuss these circumstances, which actually this whole concept that we're going through right now is a repeat of history. We were all supposed to get together about 2 years ago, some of the same members that may have been in this room, back 2 years ago with the same concerns. But that committee never happened. And so we're here back again. We have less growers than we had in the past. Yes, this is an industry of development. There is a good opportunity here for economic growth in this industry. None of the growers that I'm aware of, that I know, myself included, are doing anything illegal, whether we're growing in a greenhouse or in pots or not pots. Part of this ordinance is making an insinuation that if I have a greenhouse and I'm growing some hemp in a greenhouse, that I'm a criminal, which is I'm a farmer. Farmers use greenhouses, hothouses. So from that perspective, I appreciate the smell. Absolutely, I agree with you. There's no doubt about it. Every grower will tell you that. But is it an actual public health and safety issue for medical purposes? No. That I can tell you from my scientific background. But anyway, what I would suggest is allow the hoop houses or allow the greenhouses or allow the hot houses. It's a semantics. It's just one and the same. There's no difference. You cover it up, you grow it indoors. But that's something that we as farmers use as a tool during the winter months when we're not growing to do our research, to grow smaller plants, see what germination is like, different seeds, different varieties. So that's our time to do our research to what we're going to plant next. That's just a farming practice. It's not an illegal practice. And I don't know who's been growing that or doing that. Maybe there's one person or two people have done that. And we're here to police those people too. We don't want that happening. We don't want that happening. That messes our future up, okay? Number two, so for the smell, as a farmer, having burned hundreds and thousands of acres of brush, using restricted Category 1 materials, which they will cause a public health and safety issue of health if you have a disruption of misuse of those chemicals, okay? Even I hate those. And so, and the aroma of those, I know that the wind and the science of wind and air factors, being next door, hands up, down, it's gonna smell. But what I would suggest is what we've talked about is a 1 mile, from a 500 current distance from sensitive areas, we're taking it to 5,280 feet, okay? That's what I'm suggesting. That's a long ways for air to carry anything, whether it's a chemical or pesticide. So that's one of my suggestions. And also, we need to redefine what the sensitive areas are. You know, if someone's growing way out there in the boonies, someone decides to do a care home or a evacuation center for kids, we need to, who's protected? You know, if we're being pushed out. And so as far as sensitive areas in the local areas, if a farmer owns his land or is leasing his land, if he's in an area, they should have the right to farm. So that's my suggestion. Go ahead and put the buffers in, put the distances in, but make it farmable by people who can follow the rules. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next public speaker is Justin Eve.
To the chairman, to the board, county staff, appreciate you guys all being here today. It did take 5 years to get to this point in the industry. Seems like there's an uptick in acreage. This morning I got an email after sending a public request talking about the finances. It looks like $36,000 is all it costed last year. We've all invested a lot of money. You know, a lot of you guys understand business and how long it takes to really ramp up a business. Generally, a business isn't really that profitable until year 5, sometimes year 10. I think you guys know with PCP, it took a long time to turn the corner. And that's really the breadbasket of this region. With the downturn of rice and walnuts, you know, I think this is a real opportunity. You have the major infrastructure here that is going to require change. And that one combine is $600,000. You know, so the opportunity for you guys to solve your financial problems, which I think is probably the #1 issue in the county. And then to the other constituents with the smell, we're here for solutions. I think maybe a mile or 2 miles from sensitive areas makes sense. I have some concerns about the language, clearly defining those aspects. I'm happy to go through point by point with those, but you know, you guys have not afforded me the time. I'd like to request maybe to the chair if I could speak more, we could have some sort of engagement. But my points here is that, you know, this is about community. And when you take communication and unity and you put those together, that's where you get community. And transparency is key. This is right out of your guys' guideline, right out of your budgets and your approach. And I feel like you guys have been relatively not transparent, especially with your agriculture commissioner. I'm surprised that she wasn't here to read her own letter tonight, if that says much about, you know, how they're dealing with this. I don't send anybody to do my dirty work. I do my own work. I'm a farmer. I get my hands dirty every day. You know, my other points on here would be, you know, specific to these language. We'd like the ban to not necessarily be put in place, maybe an urgency ordinance, you know, a 1 mile setback. I think 500 feet is fair from every house. I'm not sure where the 1,500 feet came from. I don't even know what the solution of 1,500 feet would be. It seems like 500 feet is fair. If I'm a property owner, which I am, I shouldn't have to ask permission to farm my own ground in a true agriculture commodity. I gave you guys a packet with some details there. One is the right to farm. That is a document that every single resident signs, which would be a disclosure. People know they're living in an agriculture town, and it lists out exactly what is and what is not allowed legally. The other document I provided you guys, and one of them only had 4 copies, so you guys have to share the one with the revenue, but in the other document there, it just breaks down some potential production numbers. You guys would probably understand that. And then the last document on there, there's 4 copies.
I'm going to ask you to go ahead and wrap it up, and then if there are questions from the board, they will be able to address you, okay, Justin?
Thanks, Dan.
All right.
And just in the last document really breaks down what we're prepared to do to bring to this region. It'll take a couple years to do cultivation and production trials to get to that point where we feel confident investing that type of money in the region. I really appreciate your time. And Dan, the other thing I wanted to ask you was, we could also have an economic development conversation happening after this happens, regardless of which way you guys go.
Okay.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next public speaker is Rochelle Earhart-Oberg.
Hi, my name is Rachel Earhart-Oberg. Thank you for all of your time, all the meetings that you guys had with us. I just wanted, within 24 hours, a couple of us were able to get some signatures. I was able to get 50. We were hoping that you would at least have the buffer to be out 5 miles. So I can give this guy to you guys. I have all the signatures right here. and thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Our last public speaker is Stephen Roach.
Hello again. Thank you to all the supervisors for sharing your time with us this past week, with everybody on both sides of this issue. I think that's the right thing to do, and I'm glad you were available for us. You've gotten this already in your packet, I believe, but I'm going to read it out loud for the benefit of everyone who's here and who may be watching online. This is a letter that was provided to Supervisor Ziegermeyer this morning by Judson Nunes, who is the superintendent of Sutter Union High School. And it addresses probably the most important thing in this issue, which is the safety and welfare of our kids in school and our youth. It reads, Dear Supervisors, I'm writing to ask you to revise the current ordinance on hemp cultivation in Sutter County. Currently, our school has a hemp farm close to our northern property line. I was embarrassed to have the community, as well as visiting schools, come to our home football games only to be assaulted by the strong smell of hemp. There are numerous reasons I would urge you to ban it altogether. The smell and embarrassment to our school and community are only one aspect of my concern. The crime associated with hemp growing is of even more concern. When growers use guns and dogs to protect their crops, it should be all you need to realize that it is not a crop we want in Sutter County. As educators, we see the impact of the hemp industry on our youth, and it's devastating. The use of oils and vape pens is a trend that continues to lead our youth into a life full of poor decisions that often lead to devastation. I could go on and on with the statistics on crime rates and the false reporting of the use of hemp for only medicinal purposes. However, I want my words to be short and to the point. We do not want hemp near our school, in our community, or our county. No amount of revenue to our county is worth the negative impact. Sincerely, Judson Nunes. I received his permission to read that to you earlier today. I also want to commend him for his willingness to go on the skyline on this issue. I want to tell him that I support him completely. I think a lot of our neighbors who live in the neighborhood bordering the school feel the same way about it. I also want to compliment Lisa Herbert and Nick of the Ag Department, who have been given an impossible task to try and keep a handle on this crop without the resources that they need to do it. They have gone into greenhouses and places where they have felt very uncomfortable for obvious reasons. They're not law enforcement, and yet they've done that for our benefit. So I want to thank them for doing it. I want to recognize them. And last of all, I'd like to recognize the supervisors of Yuba County, not Sutter. We like you guys, but Yuba, who have already banned this crop over there. And I'm sure they had plenty of opposition to that as well. But maybe we need to take their lead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. With that, I'm going to bring it back to the board for discussion. Comments from board members? Any? Supervisor Ziegermeyer, want to open it up, or Supervisor Stevens?
I'll make a few comments. Last time was my first meeting, as some of you know, and excuse me. When this came up and was thinking about it, it really bothered me that there was growers that were going to be basically stopped from growing their crop because, you know, public opinion had changed in the smell. So I thought, well, there's certainly could be a solution to this problem. And I met with Lisa, and I met with growers, I met with many in the community, and I've totally re-educated myself. So at this point, I'll read a couple of the comments that I've heard and what I've thought about, and some of it you've already heard, but it's just my comments and my thoughts. So regarding the hoop houses, that's one issue by itself. Talking to the ag commissioner, not one is in compliance. Plants coming and going are disappearing. Non-compliant pesticides being used and stored. People living in the houses. Multiple crop cycles putting out smells over a lengthy amount of times. County or costly to ag department, which has already been budgeted cut and loss of positions. Enforcement dangers from individuals who have made threats and offered money. Convenient language barriers with no accountability.
Now, with the in-ground, that was my real issue, because when I heard the hemp houses, I thought, oh, that's got to go. But in-ground, very small acreage, you know, I was not aware when I heard earlier, I thought, well, we have farmers out there farming it. 2 years ago, it got down to 4 acres. So it's not like it's an industry that is just out there that we're putting out of business. It's a very small industry, and with the problems that are associated with it, I just don't see how it could be worth it. Very small acreage, multiple years of money lost. They say that themselves. Only a couple of growers, bold statements made by individuals that do not add up to what they are claiming it is and will be bring into the county. Talk about the thin line between balanced production and oversupply, and yet discussions of going to Nevada to put in 12,000 acres. One individual said that, you know, that the balance of production, that's why the price went down and everything, and yet they're talking about huge numbers, but yet if it gets out of balance that easy, it just doesn't make sense to me. To me, it just does not add up. So those are my comments. That's where you know, for me at this point, we talk about a moratorium, then we're going to be back into it within another 12 months or whatever it is. And I would just like to see the whole problem go away.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Supervisor Stevens. I got to start by closing the public hearing. I should have done that first, but thank you, Supervisor Stevens. Supervisor Baines, you had some comments?
Yeah, I was just going back to item 19. The purpose of my vote that day, it wasn't the point, it was the principle behind it. I want to make sure that everybody's voices were heard, and I know that the county had already worked on issuing that report, but I was just hoping to, you know, to literally stop the process to make sure everybody felt that they had a fair, I guess, stab at this thing. I want to thank County Council. Council spent some time to try finding some common ground between the growers and, you know, members of our community, constituents or residents of Sutter County, that we understand this is a nuisance, and I hear everybody loud and clear that, but I want to thank council for trying or attempting to make that item 2 that you've heard to, which was modifying the what we have today. And I think like you mentioned earlier, the distance from the sensitive receptors was not pinpoint. There was a blank on the discussions we had. It was like, hey, what is that? What does everybody feel comfortable for? I just heard a grower say that 2 miles was fine for them. And that, you know, so I don't know, you know, what you all feel on that, the 1,500 feet from the residential areas coming from 500 feet. I mean, I think it's a step in the right direction. But again, I'm just one individual up here that this, even if it is an actual modification to what we have, it's there for 10 months and 15 days, or what do we have left is 10 months and 15 days. And if it's, you know, as bad as, or if that doesn't fix the problem, then we're going to come back here one way or another, and you know, there could be a complete ban at that point. I'm just, you know, thinking out loud as I hear everybody. I hear you guys loud and clear, but I just want to make those couple comments that the staff did give us the opportunity to meet both sides. Each one of us met with everybody, and we're here to do what's best for the community. So I'm not saying where I'm standing right now. I just want to make a couple comments, and I'll let my fellow supervisors go from here.
Thank you, Supervisor Baines. Supervisor Ziegemeier?
Okay. So I've spent many hours on this, 100 hours probably. I've spoken with 4 superintendent of schools. I reached out to community members. I've spoken with our DA, sheriff, and probation and so forth. And like I said, the biggest thing is community members. I've spoken with the growers themselves. I've spoken with people that lease out facilities of the growers, because I think it's imperative to see both sides of this. Got to see the whole picture, all right? Here we all have letters from East Nicholas High School, or I should say East Nicholas School District, from Neil Stenson, proposing a ban against industrial hemp. along with Matt Gobranson, the superintendent of Live Oak, along with Heather Azevedo, the superintendent, principal of Britton School, located in Sutter, and Jedson Nunes, superintendent of Sutter High School. So here we have that. We have the community members. I've spoken with community members from Live Oak, Sutter, and East Nick. Try to hit everyone in the community to see what their thoughts are. So facts. Over 5 years, $415,000 loss. 1,082 acres farmed over that period of time. Did you realize over that same period of time there was 1,832,720 acres of available farm ground to farm? But yet only 1,082 acres of hemp was grown. Over 200 phone calls to the Sheriff's Department. Over 500 acres was destroyed over that period of time. So how this works out is the Ag Commissioner's Office gets verification of how many plants are coming in the greenhouses, in the hoop houses, in the ground and so forth. So they go out there and they do their check. Well, 90 days later, they come back, they do their verification. Plants are missing. They're gone. And no one knows where these plants go. It's incredible. Now, I know where a couple plants go because I got pictures up here of a few plants along the walking trail up to the water tower in Sutter. I'm curious how they got there. Was it that someone saw this plant and figured, you know what? That looks like marijuana. I'm going to run over there and steal some of that. Now we hear stories, I've heard stories, we've all heard stories of armed guards, dogs, and so forth protecting this valuable crop. What scares me is that some knucklehead individual thinks it's marijuana and goes over there and someone does something, whether it's fists or firearm or dogs or whatever, because they don't know any better. I have here paperwork of hemp-related crimes throughout the United States, all hemp. 10 of these stories are from right here in California. I believe half of them are from Northern California. That scares me. I spend my Thursday and Friday nights on the football field at Sutter High School during the months of September, October. It's an absolutely embarrassing moment when I wear my Sutter County Supervisor's jacket and people ask, "Are you serious? It smells like marijuana here. Is there marijuana?" I said, "That's industrial hemp, and it's planted about a mile that way and a few thousand feet that way." Did you hear what I said? About a mile that way and a few thousand feet that way, and you could smell it all the time because we have it on each side. And I get phone calls on a daily basis about the stench. It's 102 degrees, 105 degrees. At night, the temperature comes down to 80 degrees. You want to turn your whole house fan on, you can't do it because the stench is so strong, it's unbearable. And it shouldn't have to be like that. For me, you know, we live in an ag community. What do we got? 74% of Sutter counties in a FEMA flood zone. Take away 11% of the Sutter Buttes. That means that's almost 63% of ag ground available to farm. And we support the right to farm. We really do. But I've never seen an armed gunman protecting a load of rice, walnuts, or almonds, or anything else. I talked to a few individuals about the tax loss, and it is a loss to the taxpayers. $415,000 loss to the taxpayers over the course of 5-6 years. With an average of, what, about 100 acres, if you give or take about 75 acres a year, that's an incredible loss. A death threat to our ag commissioner? We had to have security for our ag commissioner when she received a death threat. That's incredible. To me, this crop scares the heck out of me. You look at what these superintendents wrote, scares them as well, especially with their youth that are going through these schools and so forth. I don't believe any good's going to come of this. And we've watched it over the last 5 years. We've seen the stories on the news. And like I said, we heard when this first happened, and I believe it was 2019, there was a theft with a firearm involved down in Verona, I believe. I tried to find that, but I couldn't find that article. But like I said, I want you to think about these hemp plants that are coming up missing. And I know that you run your lights all day, all night long when you're harvesting tomatoes and so forth, so I respect ag. But when you hear of U-Haul trucks showing up in the middle of the night and the ag commissioner's office showing up to do their verification of plants and they're gone, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I deal in facts. Now, hearsay, I could say that you hear that hemp is taken and it's, they put oil in it and so forth and it's turned into marijuana, or maybe an individual takes the plant, uproots it, goes and plants it, waits for the THC to get more mature, and they get some sort of high over it. But like I said, that's just hearsay. I read stories on it, but I haven't seen it here. What I have seen is pieces of hemp along the walking trail in Sutter, and I'm curious what it looks like in other grow areas. But I just want the public to be aware. Like I said, I've spoken to every side. I apologize to the farming community. I respect the right to farm in agriculture. I believe we're an agriculture community. But to me, this really makes me nervous and scared for my community. And I've had the better part of my district reach out and say, Mike, we want you to fight tooth and nail to ban the hemp in Sutter County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Ziegemeier. Supervisor Boone?
Well, I think Supervisor Ziegemeier pretty much covered everything. We had the opportunity to meet with the public and with the growers, and we feel for both of you. There were some ideas that came about. But as Supervisor Ziegemeier stated, that we've got a lot of problems that follow it, unfortunately. We talked about distance. 5 acres seemed to be a number that came up quite often. And then for growers,
5 miles?
Or 5 miles, I'm sorry, 5 miles. And then the growers, of course, said 1 mile. And I tried to explain to the growers, this is your one-time chance. This has been ongoing for over and over and over, year after year, and we continue to discuss it. And I know it's a project, it's wheels in motion, and we're trying to get to that right spot, but we're having a hard time getting there. With that being said, I'd like to turn back over.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor. Can I have you, Taylor, can you pull up the staff recommendation? I'd like you to review the points of the staff recommendation at this point. I want to add to the comments of all these gentlemen. I mean, we have put a lot of time and effort, energy, meeting with the growers, meeting with the community, and hearing a lot, as you know. I mean, spent especially the last few weeks and probably over the last several years. I feel like we should have, this is hindsight, but we should have come together sooner and had a lot further discussion on it as we went along. But can you review these, Taylor, the points of the staff after all of the research has come up with this recommendation? So I'd like to review these points, and then I'll bring it back to the board for whatever motion that we'd like to make at that point. And then if you could just give us a little background, like why you came to these points that you're recommending.
Certainly. So the first bullet is that the board essentially would adopt an ordinance to extend the moratorium. In the staff report, we did the option of the modify and extend that I discussed earlier, but ultimately either the extend only or the modify and extend, both of those would be staff's recommendation, just to continue the moratorium to allow us further time to study this and to get control of the cultivation and processing in the short term, which would, up to December 16th of next year, or of this year, sorry. The second bullet that we're asking for approval is to make a CEQA finding, that it does not fall under CEQA. The third recommendation is that we conduct the public hearing, which is already happening. The fourth recommendation is for you to make whatever changes you would like to the recommended ordinances. We have 2 of them before you, and both of those can be modified here before approval. Number 6 is to make a finding that basically an urgency finding. And then finally, it's to adopt and have the clerk read just the title. And again, if we're going to adopt an ordinance to extend the moratorium, whether it's the extend only, modify and extend, any version thereof, it does require a 4/5 vote.
Can you go over the details of the extend only and then the details of the modify extend? If we can just hear both of those so that we're all clear up here on what your proposals are.
Okay. So for the extend only, what I have before me is a comparison between what you approved, what the previous board approved back on December 17th, 2024, and what we're proposing today. You're essentially continuing all the same language that we had before. We're adding the end processing that was inadvertently left out, as I mentioned earlier. And there is a addition that we're clarifying that industrial hemp is not covered by right to farm. We are adopting a declaration or finding about the report that you all issued on January 14th. And essentially then just clarifying that the information heard in this hearing is adopted in. The other thing is we would be then including the definitions in there to make sure that this would be, for the next 10 months, the standing complete ordinance for industrial hemp in Sutter County, which is to say that it would be a moratorium on all cultivation and processing.
Okay.
You're the chair for a minute.
Yes.
I have a question. So if we did away with the moratorium and just decided to do away with hemp, would it still require a 4/5 vote?
To ban hemp altogether, the question is, would that require a 4/5 vote? If we didn't, okay.
Yes, any action that happens today requires a 4/5 vote.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, legal counsel. Do you want to cover the other?
Yes.
So modify and extend the other
Yes.
option.
Through the chair.
Yeah, could I allow him to complete the staff worked really hard on putting things together for you guys, so we want to make sure that we hear them out, because they did a lot of research on this and worked with the community and members of the growing community as well.
Okay, so the modify and extend version essentially brings back the previously effective ordinance that was in effect until the moratorium came about, but with changes. So I will go through the changes. The changes are what I mentioned before. It is basically to prohibit growing in greenhouses, hoop houses, to require growing in the ground, to add that exception for nursery stock to be grown in containers temporarily. We have the findings and declarations that come into account here, justifying it being an interim ordinance, because we're bringing it back, but it would only be in effect for that 10 months and 15 days. We have the clarification on the sensitive receptors that I mentioned earlier to add the churches and child care centers. There was a provision in the previous ordinance that we're recommending not be continued, and that was to say that if you have an existing permit and then there's a change in zoning, that you'd be essentially grandfathered in. We're recommending removing that part because that's proved to be problematic as the county grows. And when I say we, this is staff's recommendation based on the conversations that happened with the community. And there was a change that we made with respect to dwelling units. So in the ordinance that was in effect until the moratorium, in order to grow, you had to own the property. But we wanted to make sure that we clarified you either have to own or lease it in order to grow there. So essentially, if you rent someone's land to grow and they have a house there, just because you're not the owner, if it's your property because you've leased it, you can still grow there if otherwise it's not covered by one of the buffers. That is the major thrust of it. I know that was a lot of small things, but we really, there was a lot discussed with the community. We wanted to make sure if this was going to be in effect for the next, possibly up to 2 years. We wanted to make sure we had something that would be workable for us.
Okay, and I know Supervisor Boone and Supervisor Baines mentioned the distance. You kind of left that open for discussion, right? Okay. I know in my discussions, I heard 5 miles as a recommendation from the community, and then from the growing community, they were asking for 1 mile, so, okay. And then,
Sorry, we did have our GIS expert here with the county go through, and we kind of created an interactive tool. If you're interested in looking at the buffers, we can kind of on the fly go through some options that we thought you might want to consider. So we have like 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 mile.
okay, we'll take up that discussion shortly, possibly. Let's see where we end up with this. And then there was a question from dwellings, it was 1,500 feet or 500. I've heard a couple of numbers, so was there a recommendation that you had specifically on?
There's no recommendation from staff, so that's
Staff.
yes.
Okay. Okay, Supervisor Ziegemeier. Can Supervisor Ziegemeier first, or?
Yes, sir. I just want to say that in our meetings, we were talking about 1,500.
1,500, okay, thanks for the clarification. Supervisor Ziegemeier, you had some comments?
Yeah, I'm blown away. I got letters from 4 superintendents here from area schools, district attorney in the crowd, ag commissioner, completely against this, community members completely against this. Where's everyone else that's in supportive of this besides the growers? I'm curious, did you reach out? Because I spent many hours reaching out and trying to get both sides of the issue here. Where's your support on this? That's what I'm wondering. And I'm curious, with a few phone calls, I have 4 letters from 4 superintendents. 4 letters. If you were sitting in my seat, what would you do? And a district attorney and an ag commissioner's office, between the ag commissioner's office and code enforcement and sheriff, a possible $600,000 loss to the taxpayers. What are we debating? I'm being serious. What are we debating? I'm trying to figure this whole thing out, and I'm like, I got 4 letters here. I've seen this, and dealing facts here. I'm just curious. Why are we even debating on not banning this? So,
I guess with that question, does someone from the growing community want to respond to Supervisor Ziegemeier? I'll allow it for 2 minutes. Anybody? Okay. Oh, sorry, you'd have to go to the podium. That's okay, thank you. Clerk, if you could set the time to 2 minutes, please.
Is this on? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so my name's Tyler Tamani. I mean, none of you guys know us because we are the growers that aren't causing these problems. We're out in the ag community growing with one of the larger farmers in the areas, the Mattiolis, who we do all of our work with, who just lost 1,800 acre contracts to sunflowers. So some replacement to some contracts that we're losing would greatly help. I do understand where you guys are coming from and that there is a nuisance, but I don't think we have tried to grow under circumstances that would eliminate the problems that you folks are speaking of. The smell is a problem. Get it away from Sutter. Once again, we grew this year 100 acres. I think there's only 125 acres grown total. I know the repeating of them, we grew 100 of them, and nobody here knows where our field was because we are growing it successfully without any problems. We don't arm our fields with guns. We don't even arm our fields. We don't have any theft problem because we know where to place it, out of sight, out of mind. So I have to speak it forth, just to let you guys know that there are people out there trying to make a living at this. I too have young daughters that I support, and I understand everybody's about the risk and stuff, but it's just not there. You guys just don't know about the crop. We would be able to hold workshops, maybe let you guys know more about the good that it can do and the opportunity it can bring to our region. And we do believe strongly that this is a viable crop. We have contracts to grow 400 acres this year, which we were gonna grow in Sutter County, with an outfit out of Montana, Big Sky Scientific, and we also grow for Howe Processing out of Colorado, which we've been growing for a couple of years. So we have been working hard on contracts. We're about ready to get financing from the bank. We bought a $200,000 harvester last year that if we can't use, it's unfortunate. So we are making leaps and steps to comply with the community and taking all the considerations that you guys are bringing forward to us right here. So,
Okay, I appreciate your comments. And so if you'd like to make comments as well, let me, we have one more comment for 2 minutes only, please, okay? And then I will allow you 2 minutes as well.
So I'm Luke Wilson. I'm Tyler's partner. We've been at this since 2019. And, you know, we do have, we take all of the consideration to the comments from the public. You know, we're your neighbors too. I don't want crime in my community. We never, you know, that's not something that we want to do. We're looking at this crop as an opportunity. We farm other stuff too. And I mean, we've got contracts on the table for substantial production and dollars, you know, and we're bringing that back to the county. We do have over 50 full-time employees that are employed from this crop. So, you know, we understand the comments and, you know, we try to be good neighbors and welcome any feedback, anything. We just would like the opportunity to, you know, work with you guys.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? There was a suggestion on distance. There was a request for 5 miles from the residences. Would 4 or 5 miles?
I mean, it all really depends on where, I mean, how that map looks and what, I mean, if it's around borders, and I mean, it could eliminate, you know, almost all the farm ground around. If, you know, when we looked at 1 mile, 1 mile seemed to eliminate, I think, the problems that most people are talking about, which is the north of the Sutter High School. You know.
Okay, I just wanted to get that a little clarified. We can look at the map a little closer. Okay, comments? And again, if you could just limit to 2 minutes, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm Anita Elphick, and I live in Sutter County, have for many, many years. I'm a business person, District 1. Most of my family's in this district, including myself. And I listened to you gentlemen on this issue, and I'm very concerned that we are looking at allowing a product to be established within the community that already has a history of loss. The county is not rich that we can subsidize creating a new product that is so harmful. It is harmful to the residents, it's harmful to the schools, to the students, and we're basing this on, I don't know how many farmers, but they were just saying here, these two gentlemen, you know, created the 100 and some acres that were farmed. So we're talking maybe, what, 3, 4 farmers compared to all the population in Sutter County? I think you need to stop and review that. We have cost, and I know that they've gone out to test this hemp, and it's so borderline that if it's marijuana, but then things change. And like they were saying, plants are missing, lights are not supposed to be on and at night, and they are on 24 hours a day. It's a fact. It's not gossip or whatever. And so I think you should reconsider, or at least consider, continuing the ban and letting it go out to that 2-year period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any, yes, sir, go ahead. 2 minutes, please, only. Sure.
Thanks, appreciate the equal time. Sorry? Oh, yeah, okay, thanks. Latest statistics says that Sutter County has 380,972 acres of farmland. And yet, we're gonna cross swords about keeping it 5 miles away from houses in our neighborhood. That, you wanna talk about facts and math, that doesn't work at all. 1 mile from our houses doesn't work, 5 miles from our houses probably doesn't work. I mean, this is just silly. 380,000 acres of farmland, but it's gotta be close to our houses, and it's gotta be close to our schools, and it's gotta be close to our parks. It's got to be in our houses for month after month after month because we're good neighbors. We're just like all the other farmers. No, you're not.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I'm going to now bring it back to the board.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
So I would just like to ask county council, Bill, you wrote the ordinance ban on cannabis, and I mean, you put your time into creating this. I mean, taking out the hoop houses and the pots and stuff, like, isn't that where you thought all the problems were at? I mean,
I actually don't have an opinion one way or another on that. My understanding was that the ag commissioner took the position that if the board was not going to support a full ban, that she would request that the hoop houses and indoor cultivations be removed. And so with the idea of coming to a compromise, I drafted that and put that in.
thank you.
Yeah. Yep, yes.
So
Supervisor Stevens.
I see the same thing happening in a year or two if we go forward with the moratorium. We're just going to be right back in the same room having these same arguments, and there may be 600 acres grown, there may be 30 acres grown. We won't know until that time comes up. But the issues are all still, all the ones Mike pointed out and made it very clear. The ag commissioner pointed it out, everyone that is involved with the hemp operation has pointed out the negative aspects of it. I just don't see why we need it in this county at this point. So that's my position.
Thank you, Supervisor Stevens. Supervisor Ziegemeier.
I'm going to make a motion to propose an indefinite ban on industrial hemp for the time being.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Just for clarification.
Yes.
If the board were to move recommended action subject to removing the words modifying, just modifying and from the staff report recommended action, that would be the ban that we're talking about.
My motion is to include everything county council just threw in. All right, and no, before, like I said, I want the community to realize this is after speaking with superintendents, with community members, and advocates on both sides. All right, I'm an elected official by the community, and this is how strongly my constituents feel.
I second that.
Okay.
To the chair, if I could, just one last comment.
Sorry, we're going to have to carry the motion through, and then we'll see if we have further comments, okay? So
Before the vote, I appreciate it.
the vote's going to happen right now, sorry. I can only have you after the vote, because right now the motion's been made.
Ziegemeier had abstained because he leases, his family leased property, so I just don't want him to get in trouble.
Well, the motion's been made, sorry, don't interrupt. Okay, so we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Boone? Supervisor Flores?
No.
Supervisor Ziegemeier?
Yes.
Supervisor Baines?
No.
Supervisor Stevens?
So that was a 3.
That was a 3-2, so the motion would fail.
Okay, motion fails. Further discussion or other motions?
Well, through the chair, I'm just curious, did you guys get some letters and recommendation of it? So I'm curious why. And like I said, I respect everyone's vote, but one thing I don't appreciate is people speaking from the back and throwing out
I'm happy to
false
comment to
narratives
it if you'd like.
and so forth. But like I said, I'm just curious. Like I said, I'm an elected official, and this is what my community wanted. This is who the people that I advocate for, the whole community, and overwhelmingly, they wanted me to fight this issue. So,
Chair?
Yes, sir.
Can I make a motion to go ahead with the moratorium as stated, the one that has do away with the hoop houses and all the potted plants?
The moratorium with the modification?
Yes.
Okay, and could I ask you a question on, regarding clarification on distance? So could you remind him of the distance questions?
So there are two distances that we would need clarified. sorry, there it is. So we need to know the distance from the sensitive receptors, and that is something we're considering in miles. But of course, you can change that. And then in terms of from dwelling units, that is something we're considering more in feet.
After hearing that the county is only 7 miles wide in some areas, I would recommend 3.5 miles to and the 2,000-foot distance from a dwelling.
To the chair.
Yes.
The figure I mentioned in one of the meetings was that Highway 20 is about 17 miles wide. So I didn't want to get that confused.
So
I haven't looked at the narrowest points.
So, okay, thank you. On his recommendations, 3.5 miles and 2,000 feet from the nearest dwelling. Okay. So we have a motion by Supervisor Stevens. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, then I will have a roll call vote on the extend modify, correct? Supervisor Stevens? Okay, with the language that he proposed.
Supervisor Boone?
Aye.
Supervisor Flores?
Aye.
Supervisor Ziegemeier?
Through the chair. So this requires a 4/5 vote, and you just threw out 3.5 miles? Okay, so 3.5 miles. You guys remember back in the old harder packing days when that smell from that warehouse? Sutter's a good 6 miles away. That's 6 miles, and you could smell that stuff all summer long in the community of Sutter on a wind.
So Supervisor Ziegemeier, just a point of order, if we could finish the vote, and if it doesn't, if it fails, then we can bring up a friendly
I'm
amendment.
curious.
Or he could do a
who in the
friendly
community
amendment
you guys
now. or-
talk to find out that they support this, because I'm scratching my head on the damn thing still. I'm blown away right now. So I'm going to vote no on everything, because that's what I was elected for, and that's what my community wanted. I know I've irritated a few guys that I know in the community, but I'm sorry. When I have an abundance of community members and superintendents that tell me, hey, Mike, you need to fight this, that's what I'm doing.
So your
So-
vote's a no vote then?
But it's,
Can I say something?
sorry,
Mike, let me-
what I'm
let me-
nervous about, Jeff, is, sorry to apologize, what I'm nervous about is,
Sorry, we have a vote going on, and
if
then,
I don't vote yes on this 3.5 miles, it gets changed up to a mile, and it gets even, so it's,
no,
Yeah,
that's
but
not
nothing's
the
gonna
case.
happen. It's going to be,
The proposal on the table is for a distance of, what did we say, 3.5 miles and 2,000 feet from a dwelling. So that will not be changed. I mean, 10 months from now, everything could be changed.
To the chair.
Yes.
Chair. Yeah, I think that the thing we've got to remember is that if we do go through with this 10 month and 15 days, we still have the option to modify. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
Modifier ban,
Modify or ban through that 10 months.
30-day notice or something. So what's the?
well, I vote no, you guys are going to vote yes anyways, so I vote no.
if I could just say something to you, Mike, just if we don't pass anything, then it's the Wild West out there and they can do whatever they want. So if you're going to vote no on everything, then you're actually playing into the opposition's cards.
Supervisor Baines?
Hold on for a second, I'm going to.
already voted.
All right, you
already
know what?
voted.
You know what, though?
You already voted.
You guys know my position on this thing. I don't want to get words minced up here.
Hold on. Guys, that's the.
Well, go Supervisor Baines, you need a recess?
I'm gonna ask him if we can. Or no.
Baines voted.
Supervisor Stevens?
Oh. Well, hold on for a second. Hold on for a second.
Can we call for a recess?
Can we call for a recess for a second?
Let's call for.
I'm curious what kind of,
Legal counsel, I'm being requested to have a recess. Would that be acceptable?
Yes, it would.
Okay, we'll have a 3-minute recess, guys, okay? Recess is complete. So we were in the middle of a vote. I believe everybody voted, correct? So was the result of the vote? The result of the vote?
The result of the vote was 2 no and 3 yes. Motion fails.
Now, through the chair, doesn't it come back for a revote, which is what I was told, asked at the break?
What happens is we're back to the beginning. And
Okay.
So now the board is free to make any other motion they choose.
Okay.
So I'd entertain a motion.
I'm going to bring my vote back to ban the grow of industrial hemp in Sutter County.
I will second that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a first by Supervisor Ziegemeier, a second by Supervisor Stevens. We'll call for the vote, please. A roll call vote.
Supervisor Boone?
Aye.
Supervisor Flores?
No.
Supervisor Ziegenmeier?
Aye.
Supervisor Baines?
Aye.
Supervisor Stevens?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Thank you. All right, great. We get through it. One way or another. All right. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is correspondence.
Excuse me, through the chair.
Yes.
Can I read the ordinance title?
Oh, yeah, please do. Thank you.
An ordinance extending interim urgency ordinance number 1728, imposing a temporary moratorium on the cultivation and processing of industrial hemp within the unincorporated areas of Sutter County by any persons or entity.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. And now we'll move on. Any correspondence that we need to mention? None? There being none? Okay, well, hold on one sec. Your time's coming up. Okay, and then we'll move on to district reports, and we'll start with you, Supervisor Boone. Go ahead.
The chair, if I may, can I interrupt just for a moment?
Sure.
Hey, Jarvis? Jarvis? Sorry, the reports and announcements for the CAO were earlier that kind of briefly got skipped. I know it wasn't a plot against me, but I wanted to recognize Jarvis Jones. Wait, it's Jones, right? Jeez. Sorry, Jarvis. We've only worked together 15 years. Jarvis, because in the process of some of this hemp discussions on distances and the maps, Jarvis was on a cruise. He is our primary GIS person, and when he hit land but still on vacation, I believe he either did send some additional information, right? Okay, yeah, and sent some additional information while he was on vacation. We are extremely thinly staffed here at Sutter County, and staff make a lot of sacrifices for their jobs, and I just wanted to recognize him that he was with his family on a cruise and made something happen on his vacation. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jarvis. Appreciate it. And Steve Smith, sorry, I had announced that, but maybe you weren't listening. But do you have any other announcements?
I probably was not listening.
Okay. I don't know if you had any other announcements.
No, thank you, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now we'll move on to district reports and Supervisor Boone.
At this time, I would like to announce my new planning commissioner for District 1, that's Chris Schmidl.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Appreciate the appointment. Is he here in the house or no? Not. Okay. Thank you. Any other announcements, Supervisor Boone? You can do it now.
A good friend of mine by the name of Rick Gauthier owned FTS Digital, and several of us had our campaign signs printed by him. He's really put a lot of signs up in our community. And he had an accident here a couple of weeks ago installing a sign, and he's no longer with us. And I just wanted to make a note that it was appreciated.
Thank you, Supervisor Boone. Supervisor Baines? Nothing at this time? Okay. And Supervisor Ziegemeier?
No, well, just one thing, Sutter High School, we got homecoming basketball this Friday, so that's exciting. Come out and watch the Huskies play. Getting towards the tail end of basketball for boys and girls. Soccer's been awesome to watch this year. The girls are doing really, really well at Sutter. So get out there, and we got a lot of great high school sports still going on. Really awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Ziegemeier. Supervisor Stevens?
Yes, I've got a couple things. I wanted to just talk about Brian Davis for a moment. He and a group of other residents from the Yuba Sutter area went down to LA to feed the fire survivors and the first responders, and I think it's just, he actually went to North Carolina with me and Vish Sharma a few months ago, and I think he got the bug, and so he was one of the first ones in line to go down there and serve. So I really want to do a shout out for him. And the second thing is, I just learned yesterday, and probably Dan can tell you a little bit more about it too. I heard Clark Branscombe lost his life. That's Mayor Branscome's son over in Marysville, and his service is 4 p.m. Friday at Del Paso Country Club. But I want to wish the mayor well too.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Stevens. And I just have a few things. First of all, I want to thank Supervisor Boone, Supervisor Baines, and Supervisor Stevens for coming out yesterday to, we had a commemoration for the old hotel, and also former Supervisor Conant, who had some great stories about his grandparents who stayed at that hotel. Interesting story, though, in the past that it was Yuba Sutter residents working together to build that hotel. There were 400 individuals in this community who came together to put their money together, put their minds together, and make that building that lasted 100 years. So we're looking forward to what happens there in the future, and I always encourage us to continue to work together that way. It was just a great sign for the times. I'd like to add my name, please, to Rick Gaithier's memorial, if we could do that. I'd also like to close in memory of Kathy Messick. She was a long time involved in real estate and a friend of the community. And then I do have some comments on Mayor Chris Branscome's son. His son passed away about a month ago, very sad circumstances. And so we'd like to send our condolences to Mayor Branscome's son too. I believe we may have closed a previous meeting on his memory, but we'd like to do that and have everybody's name added. His services are Friday, as Supervisor Stevens mentioned, at 4 p.m. Okay. Any other comments from the board? Any other comments from staff, legal counsel, anything? Okay, great. Then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.